air conditioner is freezing up, so I turned it off between services and forgot to turn it on in enough time. But anyway, I'm glad you're here. We're in Proverbs chapter number 21. If you can, let's bow our heads for prayer. Father, I pray that you be with us tonight. Help me as I preach through your word. Lord, open up our hearts to your wisdom and let us learn from your word so that we might apply it to our lives so we may be wiser and more righteous for you. Pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Proverbs 21:1. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. As the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will. In Solomon's day, the king was all powerful. Whatever the king said went. His decisions were final. He made the decision. Everybody had to follow them. He was a judge, jury, and executioner. And at the time, they looked at the king almost as having godlike power. This verse is telling us, regardless of how powerful the ruler is, it's all in God's control. We kind of forget sometimes that God is in control of everything. We kind of forget sometimes that God can turn a man's heart if he desires to. There's been many a king who God, I wouldn't say manipulated, but he turned their hearts to do what he wanted to do. And God did that with Nebuchadnezzar and coming and taking Judah. He's done that with Cyrus to let the Jews go. He's done this time and time and time again. And the fact of the matter is, the truth of the matter is, God can turn the hearts of those. He can influence the king to do whatever he wants. God doesn't do this all the time. I believe that we have real free will. But this is God's creation, and he can do whatever he wants to with it. When I was a kid, I had toys, and if I wanted to play with my toys a certain way, nobody could tell me not to do it because they're my toys. And likewise, we are in God's creation. He owns it, and he can do whatever he wants to with it. So whenever you complain about the president or the Supreme Court, remember God is in control of all of it. Verse 2. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord pondereth the heart. This is a rephrase of Proverbs 16:2. All the ways of a man are clean in his own eyes, but the Lord weigheth the spirits. You could say that man rationalizes, but God scrutinizes. I believe that was J. Vernon McGee's commentary. Everybody wants to be the hero of their own story. Everybody, they want to be the good guy. So when we don't look so heroic, when we're doing things that are selfish and wrong, when we're being evil, we have a tendency of trying to make it sound like we're the hero. We justify it. We rationalize it. We come up with excuses for our behavior that we know are bad. We try to say why the thing we did wasn't so good that it's really okay. It's like, well, yeah, I know I robbed the bank, but you know, they refused to give me a loan. Well, you couldn't pay them back. But that's not the point. They refused to give me the loan, so I had to steal the money. People always come up with justifications. We ignore our motives. Why did you steal the money? Because you wanted to. Because you wanted the money. There was no altruistic motive. It wasn't like I'm stealing the money to give to crippled orphans somewhere. You just wanted to do it for yourself. But then when you get caught, you come up with this big, long excuse. God ignores our self-justification. God judges our hearts in the truth of the matter. So, should we not also scrutinize ourselves? As God scrutinized the heart, should we not scrutinize ourselves? We justify ourselves to justify ourselves to excuse our sin. Somebody will say, you know, my wife has really let herself go. She doesn't exercise. She's gained 20 pounds. That's why I cheated on her. No, you cheated on her because you were a liar and you were a scumbag and you wanted to do it anyway. But now you're trying to come up with some reason why you're not the bad guy and while it's somebody else's fault. Don't look at me. It's not my fault. That's what the human beings do. I didn't do my homework because Mom made spaghetti and I really like spaghetti and I got really excited about spaghetti and I forgot all about my homework. Did the spaghetti really have anything to do about your homework? No, you just know that you didn't want to do it and you found an excuse later to cover for yourself. We justify ourselves to blame others for our failures. We justify ourselves to look better in other people's eyes. I saw a video where a cop pulled over somebody for going 100 miles an hour in like a 45 zone. And when he asked the guy, why were you speeding? He said, he says, I had to get home because I'm constipated. And the cop's like, well, if you're constipated, that's good. And you have time to drive the speed limit to get home. The guy says, I'm sorry, I'm just not thinking right. And I've been helping my sister, and I've got some speakers to sell. He says, yeah, I can see how selling speakers would make you travel almost double this posted speed limit. He was justifying himself to make it sound like he was okay, that there was a reason. Verse number 3. To do justice and judgment is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. It's better to do right and have the right judgment than to give sacrifice. In 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 22, the Bible says this, and Samuel said, hath the Lord as great a desire in burnt offerings and sacrifices, obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. God said, I don't want your sacrifice, I want your obedience. Saul thought he could do whatever he wanted to do, then throw God a little bit of a sacrifice, then God would be okay with it. God was not okay with it. God said obeying was better than sacrifice. In the next verse, it says rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness as iniquity and idolatry. Because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected thee from being king. You see, he was in rebellion against God. He thought that he could just do whatever he wanted to and then give God a little bit of a sacrifice and everything would be okay. Rebellion is refusing God's authority over you. It's the same thing as witchcraft, and stubbornness is sin too. When God says to do something, you blow up and says, I don't want to. In Hosea chapter 6, verse 6, it says, for I desire mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God is more than the burnt offerings. In Amos chapter 5, verses 21 through 24, I despise your feast days, and I will not smell your solemn assemblies. Though ye offer me burnt offerings and your meat offerings, I will not accept them, neither will I regard peace offerings of your fat beasts. Take thou away from me the noise of thy song, for I will not hear the melody of thy viols. But let the judgment run down as waters, and righteousness as a mighty rain. See, the Jews were offering God sacrifices out of ritual only. They were disobeying God in every other aspect of their life, and they thought that they could just throw some sacrifices to God, go through the motions, and God's okay with it. He's not okay with it. It disgusts him. Your sin, you refuse to live for God, and then you come to church and act all holy and drop $100 in the offering plate, and you think God's okay with it. God would rather have you obey him than put any money in the plate. God would rather have you obey him than go through a meaningless ritual. God would rather have you do what's right than to try to pay for it with offerings later on. We often think that our good deeds are a bribe to God. I'll go to the church this Sunday so you overlook that I cheated on my wife and got drunk on Saturday. It don't work like that. You can't bribe God with your life. God wants us to obey. We don't need to be insincere. Verse number 4. A high look and a proud heart and the plowing of the wicked is sin. Arrogance and pride are wicked. Plowing of the wicked here is talking about the works of the wicked, right? The things that the wicked do wind up being wicked too. I mean, when a wicked man pays their taxes, do you think they're honest? When a wicked man pays his employees, do you think he does it above board? When a wicked man lives his life, do you think he's following any kind of rule? The answer is no, he's not. So what it's saying is the work of the wicked are a sin as well. Now, verses 5 through 7 are all on the same theme. It's about riches, and God doesn't hate riches. We need to understand that. Some people think that God hates rich people. God doesn't hate rich people, but God doesn't want us to trust in riches. God doesn't want us to rely on riches, but on him. And God doesn't want us to be motivated by money to the point where we do what is wrong. It's like our dogs are so motivated by food, I think that they would shiv each other to get a biscuit. I mean, it's just whenever the food is, we have the bigger dog. If I give them both the treat, the bigger dog will just literally take the food out of her sister's mouth. That's the way most people are most of the days. So, verse number 5, the Bible says, the thoughts of the diligent tend only to pleasantness, but every one that is hasty only to want. Now, there are some people who spend way too much time planning and not enough time doing. There are some people who spend so much time planning and thinking ahead that they never execute any plans. That's silly, and you don't need to do that. But that's a very small minority. The vast majority of the people spend far too much time doing and no time thinking or planning about what they're doing. The diligent are those who look ahead. They're the ones who pay attention to detail. They plan out their day. They plan out their paychecks. They plan out their lives. Diligence can be a personality trait. There's some people who are like OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. They want everything lined out, and that's just the way things are. My wife has a touch of this. She asks me, "What are you planning on doing today?" Now, the way I plan out the day is I'll list the big chunks of things that I want to get accomplished. To her, she's got to have an itinerary from this time to this time, and this time to this time, and this time to this time. She wants an order, an itinerary, and a time frame. I don't plan like that, so there's a little bit of a disagreement sometime between us. Most often, though, this diligence we're talking about is a discipline rather than a personality trait. It's something you can learn. It's something you can implement. It's something you can put into your life. The ones who never look ahead, those people will always be in poverty, and that's what this verse is saying. Think about this. You have two poor families. Neither one of them have much. They're struggling to put food on the table. They're struggling to pay their bills. You give each family a check for $3,000. Family A says, "Woohoo, we're rich." They go to the Walmart and they buy themselves a 60-inch TV and a brand new video game console and some games, and they think they're in high cotton. And later in that month, they have no food to eat, and they're saying, "Oh, I don't know how we're going to make it. Oh, I don't know." Family B takes the same money and they said, "Gee, we've been struggling in food. It might be a good idea for us to lay in some food." And so they go to the store and they think about it and they plan about it, and they said, "Well, we don't want to buy a whole bunch of food that'll go bad, so let's buy some canned food, let's buy some frozen food, let's do this right here." And then they come back, and then later, when they're in need, when they don't have the money, they have what they need because they were looking ahead. Family A didn't plan ahead. Family B looked ahead and said, "Gee, we might have a need." They might like to have a big screen TV and a brand new video game system, but they were diligent and they looked ahead. So it said, the thoughts of the diligent tend only to plenteousness. The ones who plan ahead, their needs are taken care of. The ones who don't plan ahead, they're just hasty about everything, they tend to poverty. And that's just the truth. Verse number 6, it says, "The getting of treasures by a lying tongue is a vanity tossed to and fro of them that seek death." Now, this is a complicated sentence, so let's break this down real quick. The getting of treasures by a lying tongue. That's what we're talking about. This is getting wealth by deceit, by tricking people. It says that process is a vanity. Now, when we're talking about vanity, we're not talking about the piece of furniture with the mirror on top of it. We're not talking about somebody who stares at a mirror all the time and says, "Oh, you're just so handsome." That's not the kind of vanity we're talking about. Here it means emptiness or profitlessness. It means emptiness. So if you get profit by lying, it will be profitless. It'll cause a great deal of contention. They are tossed to and fro. The idea is like a little tiny boat on the ocean. The waves are going up and down. The fact of the matter is that when you get wealth by lying, you're not in a stable position. You're tossed to and fro. And it says those that seek death. The fact of the matter is, it's dangerous to do this because when people find out that you tricked them, they typically get angry, then they come after you. There are certain sports that are really, really dangerous. Like bungee jumping can be dangerous. If the bungee cord breaks, you're pretty much gone. If you do base jumping, where you jump off of bridges and antennas and stuff like that, and you don't have any time to open up a secondary chute. You have one parachute, and if it don't open, you're dead. And people do that kind of stuff all the time. And some people say that they're thrill-seeking, and the fact of the matter is in a way, they're almost like seeking death. And you getting riches by lying to people is a good way. It's like bungee jumping financially. You know, you get what I'm saying? Verse number 7. The robbery of the wicked shall destroy them, because they refuse judgment. When the wicked rob or take what doesn't belong to them, it destroys them. Refusing to do right is when they refuse to do right. That's what judgment means. It gives them danger. It endangers them. Because look what it says. The way it says, the robbery of the wicked shall destroy them, because they refuse to do judgment. That is why it destroys them. They won't do what's right. The wicked, being wicked, it separates them from being the law-abiding. If you're breaking the law, you can't really hang out with people who do obey the law. It makes nobody able to trust you. If they know that you're a liar and a thief, how much trust can you have in a liar and a thief? If somebody says, give me your credit card number and I'll give you access to illegal things. Really? Why should I trust you? If you're going to give me access to illegal things, you're just going to take my credit card number and give me nothing, right? It always makes them look over their shoulder. See, they distrust everybody else. There's this thing called confession through projection. I don't know if you ever heard of this. If you're the kind of person who will steal from other people, you assume that other people are going to steal from you. If you're the kind of person who lies to everyone else, you expect everybody else to lie to you. If you're the kind of person who takes advantage of other people, you're always looking for somebody to take advantage of you, because you say, well, that's what I would do. And that separates people, and it destroys them. Verse number 8. I'm sorry, I didn't advance the thing. Verse number 8. The way of the man is forward, not forward, but forward. It's got an R there. And strange. But as for the pure, his works are right. The forward there, it means perverse. So the way of a wicked man is both perverse and irregular and odd. They do weird things. The wicked and the perverse will do weird and odd things because they're just bent wrong. It says here, but a pure, his work is right. So verse number 9. It is better to dwell in a corner of a housetop than with a brawling woman in a wide house. Brawling here means quarreling. It's better to dwell basically in a corner of your attic, hiding away, than with a quarreling woman in a mansion. That's the way to translate it. And if anyone, there's 2 reasons why you have a quarrelsome woman. Number 1, you married her knowing that she was quarrelsome. That is on you, because you should have more discernment. Don't marry a quarrelsome woman. Just don't do it. The second reason is you've done something stupid to get her mad, and that's why she's quarreling. So here's the thing. The thing is it's not pleasant when she's upset. It's not pleasant when she's fussing at you. It's better for you to dwell in the attic than dealing with this. So the best course of action is don't make her mad. There's an old saying that says, if you don't want to get bit by the bear, don't poke the bear, right? So verse number 10. The soul of the wicked desireth evil, and his neighbor findeth no favor in his eyes. The wicked person desires evil. They yearn for it. They love it. Like a pig in slop, they like to roll around in wickedness and evil all the time. And if there is no evil, there is no contention, there is no problems, they want to stir it up and make it that way. And the people around them can't stand them. We had a neighbor when Laura was little. She's probably 6 years old. We came home one day. I don't know if Ben knows this. And there was a whole mess of Kanawha County Sheriff's deputies in the parking lot to our apartment. And we asked them, so what's going on? They said the lady in this apartment, number 5, was cooking meth. So now the apartment building is condemned. We say, well, we live in apartment number 6. She's our next door neighbor. They said, well, you can't stay here. The building is condemned. They have to go and do all this cleaning because meth is toxic. So you can't stay here. You can go in briefly and grab clothes or whatever else you need for the baby, but you can't stay here. We had to spend like a week down my in-laws' house because our neighbor was cooking meth. So here's the deal. Do you think that the landlord appreciated her? No, she probably cost him 20 grand by cooking meth in her house. But it's funny. The cop said, "You had no idea she was cooking meth?" He says, "No, officer, I had no idea." Said, "Haven't you been in the apartment?" Says, "Yeah." "Didn't you smell the cat pee smell?" He goes, "Yes." "Why didn't you do anything?" He said, "Because she has cats." And the cop just looked at him and said, oh, okay. That didn't make our neighbor very popular with the landlord. It didn't make her very popular with us. The thing is I had a young kid at the house, and there's a lot of stories of people cooking meth causing explosions. She could have killed my kid. She could have killed my wife. And by her wickedness, by what she was, it's actually her boyfriend that was doing it, but still, she knew about it. The fact of the matter is, it didn't make her popular. And that's what it says here, that the soul of the wicked desireth evil, and his neighbors findeth no favor in his eyes. Their wickedness makes the neighbors just say, "I can't stand you." Verse number 11, when the scorner is punished, the simple is made wise. But when the wise is instructed, he receiveth knowledge. This is very similar to Proverbs 19:25. Smite a scorner, and the simple will beware. But reprove one that haveth understanding, and he will understand knowledge. When you punish those who scoff at a law, they mock at sin, it makes the less intelligent wise. It'll educate. Somebody who's driving 100 miles an hour in a 25 zone, when people see him get taken to jail, they think, well, maybe I shouldn't drive 100 miles an hour. If somebody goes and they break into a house to steal $25 worth of something, and they wind up having a $1,000 fine and going to jail, it will act as an instruction to other people. It's always a good idea to learn from other people's mistakes, and that's what this is talking about. There's two ways you can learn. You can either learn through your own mistakes, or this big fancy word called vicariously. Let me give you a good example of vicarious learning. When I was in the Army, when we were in basic training, they put us down in a bar. There's a cadences. They put me in a barber's chair, spun me around, and I had no hair. They shaved you bald. And so they take and make you go and get a haircut every single week. And there wasn't even stubble on your head. I have more stubble on my face than was on my head when we were in there. And the drill sergeant, they were complaining about it. And they said, well, can't we get a high and tight or something like that? And the drill sergeant, I said, I'll tell you what. If you all qualify with your M16s the first time around, says, then I'll let you guys get a high and tight. So we all worked real hard, and we all qualified with our weapons. And then we went in the barber chair. The first person who was in the barber chair was a guy by the name of Private Morgan. He sat down on the chair, and he had a big grin on his face, and went, nyeh, nyeh, nyeh. Boy was as bald as a cantaloupe. And he goes, Drill Sergeant, I thought you said we could get a high and tight. He said, well, of course you can, but you have to tell the barber what you want. We're all like, ah. He was the only bald one. And we learned vicariously through Private Morgan that we have to express ourselves, that we wanted to have a high and tight. So everybody's like, they got in the chair, high and tight, please, sir. High and tight, please. All of us said that. He was walking around like, I have no hair, and everybody else got a little bit of hair on their top of their head. Well, that's what this is talking about. People can learn through the mistakes of others. Verse 12, the righteous man wisely considereth the house of the wicked, but God overthroweth the wicked for their wickedness. So the house of the wicked, it's not talking about their physical dwelling, okay? It's kind of like the house of David, the house of Saul. It's talking about their family. It's talking about the way that they live their life, their job, and all this. And it says that the righteous man wisely considereth the house. Sometimes you look at the lifestyle of the wicked and the wealthy, and they seem to have everything. They don't seem to have any problems. But those of us who are looking at those people, we need to have a little bit more discernment than that. There's a guy by the name of Bernie Madoff. And if you looked at old Bernie, he's living a high life. He was running this financial empire, and it was worth billions and billions of dollars. At one point, it was worth $65 billion. He was living in the lap of luxury, flying around on jet planes, having big old lavish parties. And then all of a sudden, somebody started asking questions, and they found out that he really wasn't doing anything. He was convincing people that they need to invest in his company. He took the money that these people were investing, and he just spent it. And then he went and convinced more people and gave some of those people the money that the first group of people gave him. It's a big Ponzi scheme. When they found out, old Bernie went to jail. He was sentenced to 150 years in jail. And he died in prison of kidney disease. Why? He was wicked, and if the wise can say, yeah, man, look at the way he lived his life. Yeah, but those riches only lasted so long, and because his wickedness caught up to him, and he had to suffer. He never did get free. And the thing is we can wisely discern the wicked. The fact of the matter is, 90% of the time, that's just the number I made up, but I believe it's about 90% of the time, what happens is that people who are living wickedly usually there's an old saying, what goes around comes around. What you reap, you sow. Some people even call it karma, but the thing is when you live wickedly, there will come a payday someday. Most of the time it will be here, and you'll answer for your wickedness here. And that's what this is talking about. Verse number 13. Whoso stoppeth his ears at the cry of the poor, he also shall cry himself, but shall not be heard. Now remember, these are proverbial sayings. These are like catchy sayings, like a stitch in time saves nine. What it's saying is if you stick your fingers in your ears when somebody needs something, if you ignore the needs of the poor, when you have needs, nobody's going to hear you either. Now, we're not talking about the person who's standing on the side of the road looking all... It's amazing how pitiful and pathetic those guys standing on the side of the road with that sign look. If they say, we'll work for food, and you say, fine, I got a job for you to do, they don't want the job, they want the money. And a lot of those folks make an awful good living bumming on the side of the road. They don't want to work because they make more money doing that. And most of them have a substance abuse problem or a mental health problem or both, because usually those two things are linked. Giving those people money is not the kind of thing that we're talking about here. We're talking about helping people who have a real legitimate need that you can actually help them. If I give a drug addict money, what is the drug addict going to use the money for? Do you think that they're going to use it to buy food or get themselves a place to stay? Most often it's going to go in the form of the drug or the booze that they're going to put in their body. You're not helping them, you're hurting them. And so we do need to be secret. We need to be careful with that. But the fact of the matter is, we need to help those. If you see somebody in need and it's in your power to help them out, help them out. I'm not going to brag on myself. But there's been times that we've bought food for people. There's been several times I've donated time at work to people. And it's just something to help. Somebody's in need, you help them out, right? That's what we should do. Verse number 14. A gift in secret pacifieth anger, and a reward in the bosom is strong wrath. So what it's saying is, now, like I said, think about the sentence structure. Gift in secret pacifieth anger, and a reward in the bosom pacifieth strong wrath. The word pacifieth applies to both wrath and anger. Jacob bought his brother's birthright with a bowl of soup. I don't think that was a very good deal. Jacob stole his brother's blessing and made his brother so angry, he says, I'm going to kill that sucker. And then Jacob ran away. And then he married his wives, and when he was coming back home, he was scared that his brother would be angry, so what did he do? He sent all these gifts, what they call droves. He said, I'm going to give him all this cattle. And his brother said, what meaneth these droves you sent? Why are you sending me this? He says, they're just gifts. He says, I don't need it. I've got enough. His brother wasn't angry. But in the hopes of that the gift will appease anger, then that's Jacob did that. A more modern example, Jack Hyles and Dr. John Rice preached together over 2,000 times. They spent a lot of time together, and Jack Hyles had one position on tithing, and Dr. Rice had another position on tithing. And these are very strong personality people, and they disagreed. And after preaching together for years, Dr. Rice heard that Jack Hyles was had a different opinion. And he wrote him a letter and says, I need to know what your position is on this. I heard this thing. And so the next time they were together, he said, Dr. Rice, come on, we need to go somewhere. He took him down to the nearest clothing shop and bought the man a suit. Bought him a suit and tie and a pair of shoes and all this. And he gave him that. He said, why are you doing this? He says, because I love you. And he just looked at the man. And then Dr. Rice realized, you know what? We don't have to agree on everything. Dr. Hiles used that gift to pacify the anger of the man, for him to see the bigger picture. I'm not saying bribe people. It's not what the Bible's saying. But it's just telling you that a lot of times if you give a gift, it'll calm people down. It is a joy to the just to do judgment, but distraction shall be to the wicked. Shall be to the workers of iniquity. When justice is done, it brings joy to the righteous. When somebody has done evil. We watch movies where there's a bad guy who's doing bad guy things. And at the end of the movie, the bad guy gets their comeuppance and all of a sudden, yeah, I like to see that. I mean, at the end when Darth, you're fighting Darth Vader or there's a really bad guy and they get defeated, there's something that rises up inside of us and say, that's right. When somebody murders or hurts the innocent, there is something that rises up in the righteous and says, that's good and righteous, but not to the wicked. The wicked don't like that. They don't like to see justice being done. But judgment will bring destruction to the workers of iniquity. In other words, those who are breaking the law will face the law. Those of us who obey God's law, if you don't break into houses and rob people, you're okay when the people who break into houses and rob people get punished. But if you're a home invader and breaking into people's houses, it kind of makes you nervous to see people get punished for what you're doing. And eventually you're going to get punished for that as well. That's what it's talking about. Verse number 16. We're halfway done and we got 5 minutes left. So I need to spend up. The man that wandereth out of the way of understanding shall remain in the congregation of the dead. Nice complicated sentence there. Notice, you can wander into sin. Did you notice that? You can wander into sin. You cannot pay attention. You can wind up being in a place and being tempted and not finding the way of escape and being sinful, but you're never going to wander out. It's really, you can't wander out of sin. It's like a trap. There's these traps that you put down for minnows, right? You put a bait inside there, and these minnows, they swim through a small hole, and then they get in the bigger minnow trap, and once they eat the food and they try to get out, they can't find their way back out because it's easy to wander into the trap, but it's hard to wander out. It says, those that wander out of the way of understanding, in other words, following God's law, understanding the reality, shall remain in the congregation of the dead. The congregation of the dead is a way of saying the group of the dead, the people who are heading towards destruction. You can wander into sin, and I remember the story. There was a story about, what was the name of it? The Jesus movement, I think it was. And one of the characters was, some friends started doing some dope, and they offered this character dope. He started doing it, and it got to the point it was almost killing him. That's what it's talking about. You can wander into sin to the point that it will cause you to... It's like there's a group of people who are waiting on death for sin to kill them, and that's what it's talking about. Now, only God can save you from the congregation of the dead. McGee says this. He says, criminals can't be rehabilitated. They need to be regenerated. I wholly agree with that. Today's world thinks that throwing people into a jail cell will make them a better person. It doesn't. The only thing that we can do, we can't change who people are, but we can give them a reason not to do the bad things that they do. Does that make sense? Verse number 17. He that loveth pleasure shall be a poor man. He that loveth wine and oil shall not be rich. If you're focused on your pleasures and all you care about is making sure that you're comfortable and you have the latest this and the latest that, you're never going to have anything. It's going to take all your money, and you're going to spend all your money and all your time seeking that. Verse number 18. The wicked shall be a ransom for the righteous, and the transgressor for the upright. Once again, this is a parable. It's saying that justice demands a punishment of the guilty in order to deliver the innocent. Here's the thing that a lot of times that the liberals don't understand. Somebody commits a crime. And they say, yeah, but look at the poor accused individual. They come from a broken home. They're addicted to dope. They're this, they're that. We need to show them mercy. Well, I understand, but there's more than one person involved in the equation. There's more than just the person who's doing wrong. There's also everybody else in the community. You let a carjacker go because he don't know his daddy, and it turns around that the carjacker then carjacks and murders somebody. Because you let them go, more crime occur. To save the innocent, you have to punish the guilty. That's what this is saying. But I also want you to understand something. We also see Jesus in this, because he was the innocent who died for the wicked, so the wicked could become innocent. It kind of foreshadows that. Verse number 19. It is better to dwell in the wilderness than with a contentious and an angry woman. So, contentious means somebody who is angrily debating. You can say quarrelsome as well. Guys, it's better for you to get a tent and go out in the middle of the woods and stay in the tent than be with an angry woman. Once again, why is she angry? Usually it's because of something that you did. So the best course of action is, remember, God gave you 2 ears, he gave you 2 eyes, and he gave you 1 mouth. So shut your mouth, listen, and hear more, and you'll have less of an angry wife. But it is a true thing. I mean, don't make her angry or try to pacify her anger. I mean, using other proverbs, buy her some jewels or something. You know what I mean? Do something to basically, most of the time, when my wife gets angry at me, it's because I've done something stupid or careless or thoughtless. And so what I do is I first admit my wrong, and then I try to set about solving the problem. If she says, you're not spending enough time with me, I try to set more time to spend with her so that she isn't an angry and contentious woman. Verse number 20. There is treasure to be desired in oil in the dwelling of the wise, but foolish man spendeth it up. See, wise people don't spend all that they have. They save some. And the fool spends everything that he has. We live in a nation of fools because the vast majority of people have no savings whatsoever. People who make $100,000 a year, if they have a $1,000 setback, if their car breaks down, they have no money that they could go and get their car repaired, so they put it on credit cards, which puts them in bondage and debt. So the fact of the matter is, this is what this is talking about. It says that wise people don't consume we should save money back. And I need to have a mirror in the front because I need to talk to myself about that. Verse number 21, he that followeth after righteousness and mercy findeth life, righteousness, and honor. Follows after means to seek or to look for. This is not talking about self-righteousness of the Jews, where they were worried about their outer appearance. This is saying you're following after God's righteousness. You need to live for God. When you do that, you'll find life. When you look for righteousness, you'll find life, both physical and spiritual. You'll find honor, you'll find peace. Verse number 22. A wise man scaleth the city of the mighty, and casteth down the strength of the confidence thereof. Wisdom is better than strength. Here a wise man is seen climbing up the city walls of the strong and breaking down the confidence that the strong have. A good example of this strength is Babylon. You remember Babylon had these huge city walls, and they had basically like a canal. A part of the Euphrates River ran underneath the walls. They had all the food, they had all the water. They were set for life. There's no way that the enemy could ever break down their walls, and the enemy has surrounded them. In the book of Daniel, we talk about how Belshazzar decided to have a big feast, and he brought out the cups and the bowls that came out of the temple, and he's having this big feast, and they're like, we're going to toast all these fake gods with these things that came out of the temple. And all of a sudden there was a hand that appeared, and it said, many tekel ursamon or something like that. You've been weighed in the balance and found wanting. Tonight your kingdom will be taken away from you. And that night what they did is the Medo-Persian Empire diverted the river upstream. While the Babylonians were having a party, the enemy army marched underneath the walls and took the city without even a shot being fired. And Belshazzar lost his life that night. The wisdom of the Medo-Persian Empire has exceeded the strength of the mighty. And that's what the point that we're getting is. Verse number 23. Whoso keepeth his mouth and his tongue keepeth his soul from troubles. Watch your mouth and it'll keep you out of trouble. That's the easiest way to say it. Like I said, you have one mouth and two ears. You're supposed to listen twice as much as you talk. If you don't bridle your tongue, the Bible says your religion is in vain. You cause more problems by talking than you do by listening. Verse number 24. Proud and haughty scorner is his name, who dealeth in proud wrath. To the scorner, to be a scorner, you have to have both pride and a haughty spirit, which means thinking you're better than everybody else. And when pride is challenged, it always causes wrath. I know what's right. No, you don't. Yes, I do. How dare you? I have a PhD and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, buddy, but you're wrong. My favorite example of that is I saw this thing. It says USS, I forget the name of the carrier. I think it's the Enterprise. USS Enterprise, please divert your course 15 degrees south to avoid a collision. So no, you divert your course 15 degrees north to avoid a collision. This is negative. You need to divert your course 15 degrees to the south to avoid a collision. The response is, this is Admiral so-and-so in charge of the carrier group of the USS Enterprise. We have all these ships and planes. You divert your course or we will take immediate action to prevent the damage of our aircraft carrier. The response was, this is a lighthouse. Your call. They could stand up to about any other ship in the Navy, but they were heading straight towards a lighthouse. So I don't care how many times you shoot the land, it ain't going to go away. Verse number 25 and 26 is together. The desire of the slothful killeth him, for his hands refuseth to labor. He coveteth greedily all the day long, but the righteous giveth and spareth not. The lazy demands or desires to just lay around and not work. His refusal to work kills him. Quite literally, there's people out there who are starving, who don't have insurance, who don't have all the things that they need just because they're too lazy to get off their seat and do nothing and go out and get a job. The fact of the matter is that there's a lot of people who are hurting specifically because they don't want to work. He spends all day long, it says, in covetousness. That means, I want this, I want that. The desire of a human heart is unlimited. You can never match the desire of an individual. Do you realize that? People want more than they can possibly be given. Now, I want you to notice that the righteous gives willingly to others and doesn't hold anything back. And the idea, I'm going to notice these these comparisons. Lazy is compared to righteous. In other words, if you are lazy, you're wrong. That's immoral for you to be lazy. And it contrasts covetousness, wanting and being greedy, to giving. What is the cure to covetousness? The cure to covetousness is giving, is being generous, right? Verse number 27. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination. How much more when he bringeth it with a wicked mind? God hates hypocrisy. God doesn't want your gifts and your bribes, and he wants your obedience. And it's even worse when you come in, like if you come in and you're like, well, I know I'm going to cheat on my wife this week, so I'm going to put extra money in the plate. That ought to make up for it. It don't work like that. That's a wicked mind, and God hates that. Verse number 28, a false witness shall perish, but the man that heareth speaketh constantly. but the man that heareth speaketh constantly. God hates lies. God hates false testimonies. Now, my personal opinion is this. If you testify, if a woman says she was raped when she wasn't, and the guy gets 25 years to life, and they find out she lied, she ought to get 25 years to life. If you lie on somebody and said they're the ones who murdered somebody when you know they didn't, you ought to be sentenced to death in their place. That's my personal opinion. God hates a false witness. But God wants us to be honest. Verse number 29. A wicked man hardeneth his face, but as for the upright, he directeth his way. Hardening your face means setting yourself on a path. It means being stubborn. For good things, we say, boy, he's resolute, right? Jesus set his face like flint towards Jerusalem. He wasn't going to let anything come between him and the job he came to do. For the wicked things, the bad things, you're being stubborn and you're being obstinate. You're not listening to anybody. The wicked are stubborn and obstinate. They're set in their ways. They're going to do what they want to do. And they don't care how much it hurts other people. And they don't care whether something is true or right. All they care about is getting their own way. The upright, though, is the one that follows after God and lives in integrity. The thing is, God's law lights up his path. He can live righteously because he's following God. You notice how there's always a contrast here. Verse number 30. There is no wisdom, nor understanding, nor counsel against the Lord. There's people who think they're smart. There's people who think they understand the secrets of the universe. There's these people who are opposed to God, and they say, well, I don't believe in no sky daddy. I'm not going to believe this junk. And the fact of the matter is, there is no wisdom or understanding against God. You see, God is the ultimate reality. When you boil everything else down, there's God. Everything else stems from him. So if you deny God, you're denying reality. There is no other thing but denial of reality there. Verse number 31. The horse is prepared against the day of battle, but safety is of the Lord. The horse was a military technology. It was like a Humvee or a tank back then. See, you can prepare for battle. You can train, you can plan, and you can even have a training montage like from Mulan or from Rocky or whatever, and you go through all this stuff. But unless God is in it, there is no safety. Stonewall Jackson said, my religious belief teaches me to feel as safe in battle as in bed. He said, if God wants me to die, I'm going to die. I don't care where I am or what's going on. So he'd be out in battle, bullets whizzing around his head, and he's just talking to people. All right, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this. And they're like, aren't you afraid? Well, God ain't going to let me die unless it's my time. It's my time. It don't matter if I'm hiding or I'm being brave. Fact is, there's safety in the Lord. And that's what the verse is meaning. All right, well, that's all we have. Did you guys enjoy Proverbs 21? All right.